behalf of the Normandy Chair for Peace and the chairholder, Tony Aposa, and all those who have participated so creatively in the last 3 years of work for making peace with nature. It's my privilege to welcome you to this session of the final event of the Normandy Chair for Peace. We'll have an opportunity to review the work of the Normandy Chair for Peace and several of its aspects. But just in advance, I want to thank all those who will be speaking, all those who are online, and all those who participated in the events that are being described here. There are so many people who have made the Normandy Chair for Peace a success that we can't mention every name or every event, but this will give you the highlights. And I pay a special tribute to our scientific director, Emily Gaillard, who has been inspirational in putting together such a rich tapestry of activity. It's not just one strand, one line of activity. It is many strands, many themes that are woven together in mutually reinforcing, symbiotically valuable initiatives. It leaves a great legacy of work and instruction for us, but also it has laid the foundation for a lot of work yet to be done. And that's the exciting thing. This is just the first step in the journey. So over to you, Professor Gaillard.
Thank you so much, Professor Robinson. It's a tremendous honor to have had the opportunity to meet you and to work with you the last years. I warm thanks Johan Zonle, who made the link with Pace University when I was visiting New York. And I think today it's a good momentum to show and to share with the students who came last year the experience, which has been a tremendous, amazing, of the NCP Summer School. I'm realizing that I have to switch into French now. Je vais parler en français à présent. Donc je disais que
I will speak in French. So I said we would be very happy to meet online all of the students who participated in the summer school. And I wanted to explain why we organized this summer school. So in that line, in that perspective of sharing an educational line on the rights of future generation, as I said yesterday, in high schools, junior high schools and senior high schools, amongst a wider audience, we wanted, beyond this master's targeted at future generations and rights of future generations, we wanted to disseminate this knowledge on future generations and to really build upon this core heart, the essence of the masters. So what I want to do is today is to come back to the schedule, the curriculum of the program of that summer school, and I want to give the floor to the students who are online, whom I have the immense pleasure of seeing connected online. So this was a summer school that gathered students from all the continents with a gender balance, with also different cultures, with different countries, with different religious faiths. And at the same time, we had to proceed to select students. And we had collected colleagues, namely the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. Later you will actually see Christopher Bartle, and thanks to this initiative we met with different judges from different Supreme Courts via the Global Judicial Institute, which is also connected with the IUCN, and we had asked several colleagues, judges, magistrates, law practitioners, to select students who had a remarkable profile and whom, according to them, would be the most advised students to participate in that summer school. I would like to thank Nicole Ponce, who worked a lot in order to contact each and every person who assisted us in the organization of the summer school. And following this selection process, we had about 40 to 50 files. We had selected 33 students from different universities. There was Paco Mengual from Pace University, Eva Buyaki from Hawaii, Callie Hopkins from Pace University, Natya
Sadvika Krishnan de Pace Law University. Et puis nous avons un pool
and then there was a pool of students that were appointed by Professor Shakil KASMI, Raiza Riyad, and Fatima Hasif, amongst others. What you need to know is that we will be very honored to watch a documentary prepared by Moussadak Sultan later, and he's one of the students who participated in the summer school and who really supported the Normandy Chair for Peace in its communication materials. So the selection process, I learned it later on. 400 files were submitted from Pakistan to participate in this summer school. So our colleague had to organize a selection committee made up of 4 colleagues and to select 4 students. And these 4 students, even before being trained by our group and SHIN, they had attended a very intense training under the direction of this professor. Then we had other students from the Philippines, and I would like to thank Mrs. Rose Lisa from the University of the Philippines, who selected the candidates. We had Armel Mpala, who comes from the university in Cameroon. I have a special thought for Armel Mpala because he was a French-speaking student and he did everything he could to integrate, to really mix in with most of the students who were English speakers. We had a student from Argentina. We had a student from a university, Santa Catarina from Brazil. We had a university from Caribbean. We had a student from the University of Hawaii, Moussadak Sultan from the University of Lahore. We had a student, Kenny, from the University of Sydney, who came later, and he was recommended by Judith Preston. So I would like to really thank her. And Kenny is an active member of an indigenous people in Australia, and I hope she will be able to take the floor to tell us about what she does there. Imad Bakshi from India, Alexandra Bonhomme, and Rocio Catalan from Chile, appointed by Judge Michael Hunker, whom I would like to thank. And we had all of the future generations and legal transitions class, which I coordinate. We had Aude Bonton, Maurelise Dréan, Morgane Geoffroy, Mao Petito, Lolita Kouchen, and I think you will see them later. So this summer school was a great adventure, a great undertaking, because for foreign students, we also had to look after visas, and we had to develop a relationship of trust and collaboration with the different French embassies. I would like to thank Sabine Ferriard from the Cooperation Department of the French Embassy in Pakistan, who welcomed them very well. And just to tell you that everything we do for that summer school in that chair is just sowing seeds for the future. And so this possibility of welcoming, this opened up the possibility of welcoming as an intern Moussadak Sultan in Caen, and and I will soon come to Lahore, to the University of Lahore, to thank the French embassy and my colleagues from the University of Lahore for the work performed by Musarak Sultan about the communication on future generations. So I will show you the curriculum and the program online. The online program, you have all the online program of these 4 days of training, which were very intense training days. First of all, we wanted these students to arrive well. So we wanted to know, so I'm going to share my screen. So I'm sharing the screen. So can you see that properly? Okay, so for the first day, so all of these students came from very far away. So some of them had gotten their trip financed. For others, their trip was not entirely financed, but we tried to give them as much possibility to come and as much resources so that they could come. I think in my career as a researcher, there were two striking events, and this was when I was in the organizing committee of Monsanto, and this second event, the summer school of the Normandy Chair for Peace, was a very, very important event also for me. So I thought we had to share with these students. Of course, they have a very advanced training, but we needed to get them to understand the need, the historical need of developing a law that protects future generations. And this is how we started the first day in this amphitheater here, which is why I wanted to do the final event here. We start with the first day, which dealt with the entry into a transgenerational era, with a basis of knowledge, of philosophy, of ethics, in order to understand why today we need a future generations law. We need the rights of future generations to be recognized. As you know, within the framework of the NCP, the Normandy Chair for Peace, we want to give the floor to the pioneers, and Mary Evelyn Tucker, who is a researcher and scholar at the Yale School of Environment and a professor, started to talk about the cosmogony of peace, and through the screen, she shared her passion for this cosmogony. Then we gave the floor to our colleague, Katie Bryson, and she's responsible for a chair attached to the IUCN, and she spoke to Christiane Derani from the University of Santa Catarina, and these two colleagues really embody this message of decolonization, the decoloniality of law, and their presentation, as many others, were presentations that enabled the students to elevate their levels of awareness so that they understand this work about decentralization, or the decentering work compared to a traditional approach. So then we had also some students, the Dean of the University of Peace in Costa Rica took the floor to encourage the students. So this was a very rich day with many different interventions, with also Alexandra Aragao from Portugal, who launched an appeal for an innovative and responsible research, and Johan Sondler, within the framework of the NCP, the Normandy Chair for Peace, leads a line of research that deals with environmental ethics for jurists. This was the first day of the program. So for the second day of the program, the first day was really the background, you know, the foundations. And the second day, we dedicated it to the analysis of the process of the metamorphosis of law. And here you have the program on the screen. So the question was to know how we can concretely have a recognition of rights for future generations. And these are systemic, very complex processes of metamorphosis for our systems of human rights and fundamental rights, because now these rights are becoming transspatial, transhuman, and transtemporal. So first of all, we had to give the tools to students to adopt this theoretical approach. We needed to have these principles for transgenerational law, even if this is the general theory of law. So this is at the heart of my work with David Forman. We also looked at the theoretical basis of the rights of future generations. So Corinne Lepage, who was the Minister of the Environment in France, she's also a European Member of Parliament. She presented a work on the Declaration of the Rights and Duties of Humankind. I had the honor of participating in the drafting committee of this Universal Declaration, which we had submitted to the French President, François Hollande, with the perspective of presenting it at the COP21 in Paris. And then Corinne Lepage joined the civil society on an international level. And then this is a way to recognize transgenerational rights, the right to dignity, transtemporal discrimination. So it was a great honor to have a personality such as Corinne Lepage during that time. So from theory to practice, what we saw is that you know, that basis of knowledge with regards to the theoretical foundations was laid. So this can create, of course, a lot of resistance. So we then looked at the implementation, and we saw how the Global Judicial Institute and Professor Robinson, how these classes were really implementing these rights of future generations. So we actually connected it with different events, different lines of research. We insisted on the One Health approach, which is a systemic approach, which enabled us to give more consistency to the rights of future generations. For example, the right to life, the right not to be convicted to death penalty. So right to life in the transgenerational approach, this is the right not to have toxic residues in your body from your birth. So here we had Gilles-Éric Serralini, who is a biologist specialized in molecular biologist, who identified in the umbilical cords more than 200 residues of toxic substances. So the necessity to rethink the rights of future generations, which start from birth. It is also the right to live on uncontaminated land, to actually swim in uncontaminated and clean sea and water. And this is not the case anymore, because we see that in Fukushima they have started releasing radioactive water into the ocean. This is a long-lasting disaster. So freedom and the right to life of future generations is also the right to a healthy environment. And this is a right which has already been known. We had the huge honor, the immense honor of having Edith Birgit Brown-Weiss, and this was really a great honor for us to put in touch both the young generations with the pioneers who created the rights of future generations. So I would like to thank all of the participants who are here today, and I'm very happy to see these pioneers are online today, and more will join later. So we also gave the floor to some students like Christopher Suder. So this is for the first 2 days of the Normandy Chair for Peace Summer School. So then how can we imagine the rights of future generations? And the third day was really important for us. We highlighted the question of the restoration of justice, so restoring justice by making peace with the earth through a dialogue with indigenous peoples. And this sends a key message, not just for me, but also for Professor Robinson, Christopher Sudan, David Foreman, and with Leslie Clue. This day was very, very rich. This day started with an opening by Kenneth Deere, and you will see later in the documentary, he explained the Haudenosaunee flag, their relationship with peace, and we explained as well how we had started our work in Colombia with the Normandy Chair for Peace with the Kogi people. And also, Eric Julien did a great presentation. We continue to work with Eric Julien. He has been working with the Kogi people for 37 years. We focused on the abandonment of the doctrine of discovery, which was adopted during the World Congress of the Conservation of Nature, and Christopher Sudan, who participated in this summer school, made a great presentation on this. So I would now like to come back to the fourth day, because we have a lot to say. So the fourth day, we also focused on the subject of climate justice. So with young people from the movement World Youth for Climate Justice, with Ivano Alonia, who is an expert colleague, a colleague who is expert in climate justice, who explained the international context with with all of these law cases about climate justice, and there were mixed perspectives between these young people and their teachers and professors. So very diverse perspectives were mentioned. So here you see these were training sessions to the rights of future generations, and most of these topics are really at a crossroads between the research led by the Normandy Chair for Peace, and the Masters on Future Generations. So my wish is that we continue to disseminate these ideas and this educational program, this pedagogical program. But before we do that, students were already worked upstream. When I selected the students, when I established a program, I also added the fact of doing a session of simulation, a mock UN session. And at the time, we wanted to do a session on climate justice, and we wanted the students to work within delegations, within their official delegations, as if they were representing states, and that they were going to negotiate the text of resolutions that were going to be adopted by the UN General Assembly. I chose this topic because a few years before, when I met with Christina Voigt, David Foreman, Nicholas Robinson in Hawaii in 2016, you know, Tony Oposa had organized mood courts, and we were playing about this with the students, and we wanted here to be as true, as close to reality as possible. And I would like to give the floor to SHIN, who was absolutely remarkable in order to prepare this dual training session. So we were a group with David Forman, Alan Ware, SHIN, and another colleague, but SHIN was a great conductor, and she organized this very well. Welcome, SHIN.
Thank you, Professor Emily GAILLARD. Once more, I mean, thank you for inviting me to this session. It's a little bit of a walk down memory lane, because this was about a year ago that we held the NCP Summer School. Of course, my very big thanks to NCP itself, Normandy Chair for Peace, Nicole, Tony, Emily, also the University of Cannes for graciously hosting the students, which really, you know, they came all over the world, and they hit the ground running, I must say. We did have a very short timeline also to prepare the entire summer school, as well as hold, you know, online sessions to prep the students before they arrive in Cannes. And as you can imagine, this happened in September, which meant that the group of us, my colleagues, who I would really like to recognize, David Forman, Alan Ware, Shaquille, even Joshua. I think they were very instrumental to putting this together during summer in Europe. The prep that were required for this Meta-MUN, and I called it Meta-MUN not because it was attached to Facebook in any way, shape or form, but meta because it was a simulation within something that was actually happening in real life. But also given the amount of time available for the students to run or to become delegates to this MUN, Model United Nations, we've had to make the MUN itself very compact and fit it in one day. Typically, a model UN would last about a week with months and months of prep in advance. But in this case, the students literally had 4 days of a crash course on all things pertinent to rights of future generations, Earth trusteeship, right to a healthy environment. And I do salute the the hard work of all the students. Really, truly, without them, there would not have been a summer school. I would definitely say that the decision to pick Vanuatu's initiative to bring an advisory opinion to the International Court of Justice was a very easy choice. We had to choose between a MUN simulation on the right to healthy environment or the advisory opinion. And at that point in September, we didn't know this. Well, we knew already in June that the Human Rights Council had voted and adopted the right to a healthy environment. So that leaves us just one choice, which was Vanuatu's initiative to bring in advisory opinion to the ICJ. I would really like to recognize Chris, who is also in the room. Chris Butler is with the Vanuatu government. So hi, Chris, must be late there. But yeah, Meta-MUN was also called Meta, basically because not only did it involve delegations, so country representatives, but we included the element of stakeholders. Stakeholders in this sense meant industry lobbyists, international NGOs, and also private companies like tech companies. So in terms of stakeholders, we had Exxon, big energy company. We had Kansai, also a electric company in Japan. NGOs, we had Stop Ecocide International. We also had Greenpeace International. And as the tech stakeholders, we had Alibaba and Amazon also chipping into the negotiation process. Now, of course, they all had access to the zero draft. And I would really like to thank my colleague, Alan Ware, who was so very helpful in this with his experiences with UN resolutions and also his experience with the nuclear weapons advisory opinion case. We came up with a few pages of a zero draft, a resolution, which we haven't, we didn't know what Vanuatu was going to write, but basically we had all the elements that we think zero draft itself. So addressing things like rights to future generations, right to healthy environment, even considering developments in international criminal law, such as the inclusion of ecocide. I myself also represent Stop Ecocide International, so I thought that that was a very key element that the students not only need to understand, but to consider in deliberations such as this at the UN level. I must say that we had in total 13 country delegations. They were split into groups of either 1 to 2 students, which was, again, as you can imagine, they had only been in Cannes for 3-4 days. Some of them even arrived late. They had the documents in advance, but still, it's a lot to chip in. So I was very proud of the students for being able to, learn and get to know each other. Despite some of the language barriers, they still managed to pull through. I think that they did a very good job in terms of teamwork, in terms of also lobbying and advocating on the side, even before the MUN happened on day 5. So truly, my hats off to these students. Those who represented stakeholders, Kenny's in the room, they worked solo because, we didn't have enough students. If we could have had more country delegations, we could have had more stakeholders. But I do commend the students who did this on their own. It was no small feat. The day itself of the Meta MUN, it was held at a very historically and beautiful place, the Abel Dam. And thank you to Emily for setting this up, because the courtyard, as the students walk in, the courtyard, the building itself, the venue itself, the setup of the room with cameras and microphones and placards with their country names on there, it all gave them, I really wanted to let them feel how it is in a simulation. And plus, special thanks also to Joshua Cooper, who isn't here today, but Joshua also beamed in, and we really wanted to make this as close as possible to a real resolution that was going to be adopted at the UN General Assembly. So Joshua beamed in as a correspondent from the BBC. So the day itself started off with a bang. We had BBC talking about, there's going to be a very historical adoption, possibly of a resolution at the UN. And of course, Miss Emily, she was the quote unquote, the UN Secretary General. Alan acted as the president. Hi, Alan, I just see you there. Hi. Alan was the president of the UN General Assembly. And because of the short amount of time, I acted as the chair of the General Assembly so that the students don't get bogged down with the technical and the protocol details of a typical MUN. So they only focus on the substance itself. They had time to deliver their statements within the time limit. Stakeholders also had time to deliver their statements. And halfway through the simulation itself, they broke out into negotiations or caucuses. And during each of these caucuses, we divided them into separate rooms where they can negotiate the text, consider things like climate, consider things like what about the economic development or economic rights of the country. And we also discussed things like, principles, rights of future generations in another caucus. So there were 3 separate caucuses. I think by then we had a very short lunch pause at the Abeon Dam. Excellent food, but I remember Alan and I working really hard in the room trying to put together the zero draft, including all the proposed amendments from the countries. So it was a lot of work, but we made sure that some of the students had time to, you know, gulp down their lunch before they come back for the second part of it. As I see Alan in the room, I wonder if Alan would like to chip in, because I was just going to go to the second half of the MUN and also tell the people in this on the screen or the audience here how the resolution was adopted.
And we have the documentary, 25 minutes documentary.
That's great. So we know. Wonderful. Also, I think before I hand over the floor to Alan, I thought that it was also a very touching moment when we did a 1-minute silence for the victims of the floods in Pakistan, because that had also just happened then. So it really made the whole situation and the feeling, the atmosphere a little bit, you know, quite visceral, because we had the video from University of Lahore, which was really well put together and, you know, gave the students a sense of, we are in a climate crisis. What should we do? How can we put our thinking brains together and our negotiation skills together to make sure that this is a resolution that is, you know, for students experiencing MUN for the first time, and also not for the first time, something for them to remember, because they were and they are still part of this little blip in our human history. Alan, can I give the floor to you?
Thank you, Charlene.
Thank you, Charlene. Just a couple of comments. I think setting the scene for the Model UN was very important. In order for the participants, the students, to feel that they were taking on the role of the governments at the United Nations General Assembly, Emily had managed to get a wonderful room, which was sort of shaped in the way, a slightly smaller version, but shaped in the way of the United Nations General Assembly, with proper desks, with nameplates for the countries, with a proper podium up the front for the president of the UN General Assembly, and also for the Secretary General, you know, to open the session. I think creating that context was really helpful, because it helped the students feel we really want to take on what it means to be these governments, you know, taking on the responsibilities, but also, you know, with the various influences that are on governments. So they took it very seriously. So they came into the shoes in a hopeful way, in somewhat of an idealist but practical way. And so you saw that the types of comments that they were making very much reflected the political situations from the countries that they were representing, and yet they were all trying to find, in the confines of what our national interests are, we realize this is an issue of global importance, and there is a shared interest in making a difference here. So they all recognize that we have to step a little bit beyond our national interests, but we're still constrained a bit by our national representative role. And it's that dynamic which I think the students played very, very well. And that's partly because it was set up in a way that was conducive to that, that led them to take a very realistic approach, but also a very hopeful and progressive approach to find solutions. And I think, you know, we've seen exactly the same with the way that Vanuatu has been engaged with the actual countries in reality at the UN, taking the time to work on this resolution, not rushing it through quickly and just pushing countries to go either one way or the other, but really taking the time to engage with the governments so that by the time they actually got to put it to the vote in the UN General Assembly, they had already addressed so many of the issues that the governments have been raising, and so managed to get the resolution through without a vote. So Vanuatu actually did even better than our students, but we had one day. You know, Vanuatu sort of did this process over like a year or so, 2 years, I think. But I think that process is really important, because it shows that if you're a political realist, then you actually have to realize that there is more than just national interest that's happening here in the world. There is this global concern of the climate. It's not the only global concern, and that those people who are representing national states have to stretch, their responsibility to be not only for the national interests of their governments, but also the responsibility to the planet as a whole and to humanity as a whole. We saw that happening with these students. They took on that. We've seen it sort of happening to some degree with the fact that Vanuatu managed to get this resolution through in March of this year. Now we want to see how it's going to play out with the case itself, and to ensure that we're working very, pushing, the governments, but also international organizations. It's not just governments who are participating in the case. The court itself has opened up a lot more than in the past advisory opinions, and Neshin, could probably say a little bit more about this.
Yeah, there will be the session after.
The next session also. Yeah. But what I think is the students, were reflecting that, in this,
yes.
and the fact that, Emily also brought to the media, and we opened the whole thing with a statement of the Secretary General and the President of the UN General Assembly to the global media. We had Joshua Cooper, who actually has a media program from Hawaii, was, the representative. That's also set the scene, and we had some media representatives in, doing the deliberations, also reporting on things as they were happening. So that's just a few reflections.
Excellent.
I think altogether it was like a really incredible experience for the students to understand that yes, you have to understand where countries are coming from, but also you have a responsibility as part of our global common humanity. And that's coming more and more into play in these issues in the United Nations in particular. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to switch into French. Donc, je voudrais vraiment remercier mes collègues. Comme vous l'aurez compris,
so I would like to thank all my colleagues. I've, asked them to work very, very fast. They've done an excellent work, and also students just followed, what we asked for.
The documentary. And I would like to say to the students who are online that I will give you the floor. Je vais vous donner la parole après, Lolita Armel. Et je vous informe que
so I would like to give you the floor, and also have Christopher Bartlett from the Vanuatu region to take the floor. So this is the document which has been produced by Musarak Sultan from the University of Lahore. This is the video.
Hello from France. Urgency and emergency status has been declared.
We are all diverse, and it is in that diversity that we find our strength.
This is my my passport. It's called Haudenosaunee passport.
We must think globally and act locally.
Urgency and emergency status. Urgency and emergency status.
Here, Allied forces landed on D-Day, marking a turning point in World War II. These waves carry memories of sacrifices.
Emergency status.
These winds whisper tales of unwavering commitment to protecting freedom, human rights, and peace.
Emergency status.
The years may pass, but the lessons of war are still inspiring us to continue the journey towards a more peaceful tomorrow.
La Normandie, depuis 1000 ans, a un rapport très particulier au monde. Elle a participé de plusieurs développements d'idées qui ont interféré ou qu'elle a légué un peu partout en Europe ou dans le monde. 1000 ans, pourquoi? Parce que lorsque c'était un royaume anglo-normand, des fondements du droit ont été développés, une organisation de royaume, et ce fondement du droit est pour une part à la base du droit anglo-saxon, aujourd'hui encore. Et puis, cette région, comme beaucoup d'autres, mais cette région a participé beaucoup au développement des idées du siècle des Lumières. Un premier traité de paix perpétuelle, qui sera ensuite repris par le grand philosophe Kant, a été écrit par des cercles intellectuels et un philosophe de cette région. Et puis enfin, le début de la grande bataille qui marque la fin de la Seconde Guerre mondiale démarre en Normandie, après ce qui s'est passé en Méditerranée, mais tout le monde dans le monde entier se souvient des plages du débarquement, des plages du D-Day. Et donc, ce rapport au monde fait que la Normandie a un devoir de transmission aux générations futures, aux générations actuelles, et qu'elle s'efforce de le faire.
We live every day here with the footprint of World War II. But you know, many great moments in the history of Normandy and ongoing, consistent efforts like the reconciliation process, D-Day celebration, Normandy World Peace Forum, made this region as a symbol of peace for the whole world.
La chaire Normandie pour la paix est née de la rencontre entre une volonté politique, celle du président de la région Normandie, et d'une volonté scientifique, celle du président du Centre national de la recherche scientifique, le CNRS, qui est le très grand institut de recherche français. Le président de la région Normandie avait créé le Forum Normandie pour la paix pour reprendre l'événement majeur du début de la fin de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, c'est-à-dire du début de la grande bataille qui mène à la fin de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, pour en faire une manifestation où se rencontrent les faiseurs de paix, où peuvent se discuter les conflits aujourd'hui. Et ce Forum mondial pour la paix, la volonté était qu'il y ait une chaire d'excellence scientifique. Cette chaire d'excellence scientifique a été confiée par le CNRS et par la région Normandie à l'Université de Caen, à la Maison de la recherche en sciences humaines, où nous sommes aujourd'hui et dont j'assure la direction. Et nous avons proposé le thème du droit des générations futures, car ça nous semblait en même temps une réelle progression dans la réflexion fondamentale sur le front de ces idées et un lien avec la question majeure de la paix sous tous ses angles. La paix pour l'accès aux ressources, la paix en relation avec le climat, la paix avec la nature de manière générale, ce qui est un thème majeur de cette chaire d'excellence, Normandie pour la paix, droit des générations futures.
The objective was to create a chair that is not only academic, innovative, international and inclusive, but also involved in scientific diplomacy. So we had in April 2019 several meetings at Pacelow University with Tony Oposa and Professor Nicholas Robinson. And we drafted together 13 lines of research, and this was the starting point of Normandy Chair for Peace with the Earth. It was in May 2022 that Normandy Chair for Peace came up with the idea of an international summer school where we would bring students from around the world to Cannes in France for a 5-day eventful experience. The 4 days in the lead up to the 5th day, on the other hand, was the training that students had to undergo, because on the 5th day, we came up with the idea that the students would enjoy being in a role-playing simulation game, which we call Meta Model United Nations.
L'idée de départ de l'école d'été était toute simple dans le fil de l'idée générale de la chaire. Elle était de rassembler en Normandie, non seulement pour une raison symbolique, celle de cet héritage de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, de cette grande bataille, de la faim, et de transformer cette situation de guerre en une situation de création de futur de la paix, de rassembler en ce lieu des gens des jeunes venant de partout dans le monde pour réfléchir et travailler sur les thèmes de la chaire, ce droit des générations futures, et de façon très appliquée, justement, dans cette préoccupation de la chaire qui est très académique et en même temps dans un lien avec la société civile, de travailler à la réflexion et la mise en œuvre de l'impact de ces idées dans les organisations et les négociations multilatérales. Et quoi de plus multilatéral que l'Organisation des Nations Unies? Et donc d'avoir au cœur de cette école d'été une simulation de la défense d'une motion pour le droit des générations futures, telle que, et c'est une grande réussite pour tous ceux qui y ont pensé, telle qu'elle s'est exactement produite un an, presque, même pas un an, 9 mois après cette école d'été, aux Nations Unies, au printemps 2023, eh bien, donc des jeunes qui venaient du monde entier, de tous les continents, la quasi-totalité d'entre eux n'étaient jamais venus en Europe, ont travaillé à la fois théoriquement et dans des exercices pratiques avec une équipe de formateurs venant eux aussi du monde entier à cette réflexion et à cette simulation.
The summer school was crucial to be held because it was in line with all the objectives of NCP. The idea of training on rights of future generation was new, so I first started by creating with Sciences Po Rennes a master degree entitled Future Generations and Legal Transition to train students here in Normandy. Then we wanted to spread this idea to the full world. That's why we invited students from different parts of the world and planted the seeds of the idea in their minds, so that they take these ideas back home and discuss with their teachers, class fellows, and community people.
We knew from the very beginning that this was going to be a huge task to organize what I dare say was an ambitious summer program involving a wide range of topics from peace, security, intergenerational equity. Emily was so passionate about bringing the best students, the best minds, the top professors, the best professionals in order to train local and international students and foster conversation, engage them in discussion in the hopes that at the end of the program, they will go back to their homes and share and enrich their country with whatever they learn from the summer program.
So we made a principle that every student must be selected and recommended either by an eminent professor or justice. French students of Sciences Po Rennes campus of Caen were also part of the summer school, and it was an opportunity for them to discuss these novel ideas with international students.
I'm doing PhD in environmental science. Summer school was a very big opportunity for me. If I talk about the selection process, so it was very tough. The call for the application was posted on our university Facebook page. There was more than 300 applicants.
I applied for the call for the summer school Normandy Chair for Peace because I was very interested in the topic they proposed to address. I know that it was a selection with many high qualified candidates, and I am extremely honored to have been selected for the opportunity to go.
It was very much enriching to learn more about the protection of the rights of future generations. I would say that my best experience was definitely the Model United Nations, where everybody was very much dedicated to this work.
I have been using performing arts as a medium of awareness for the past 4 years. And when the advertisement for the NCP Summer School was advertised over the social media pages, I applied for it. And my interview was held by the 3 panelists, and it was led by Professor Shakil.
Some students were funded by their own universities, others by NCP.
We were very pleased and fortunate to have participants from such diverse backgrounds. We have Himat from India, Gaia from Brazil, Ornella from the Caribbean, Taylor from Australia, Kenny from Singapore. With such rich backgrounds, the participants were not only learning from the professors, but were learning from each other, and that was very exciting to witness.
Rocío Catalán y Alejandra Bonón fueron las dos estudiantes de Derecho que fueron a Normandía y puedo dar testimonio de que esta fue una experiencia transformadora para ambas.
In the lead up to the International Summer School, we made sure that the students were well prepared. So we conducted Zoom sessions. We set up a base camp so that any questions, any documents were included in there. During the Zoom sessions, the students had the opportunity to ask us questions about the technicalities of Meta-MUN, for instance.
If they can introduce themselves, that will be nice as well.
Exactly.
I'm from the William S. Richardson School of Law.
Hi, my name is Eliza. I am from Brazil.
My name is Basilio Apolinario. I'm from the Philippines.
We are in Bolivia. I am a third-year law student at Pace Law School.
I'm Gaia. I'm from Brazil.
I am from the William S. Richardson School of Law at the University of Hawaii.
Le soir de l'accueil des jeunes étudiants et des équipes d'enseignants de l'université d'été, de l'école d'été, c'était une expérience à la fois intellectuelle et humaine extrêmement intéressante, rare au total dans son ampleur, pour quelqu'un qui pourtant comme moi, et mon métier est de faire de la collaboration internationale, mais la diversité et l'échelle des jeunes gens qui venaient de tous les continents, absolument de tous les continents, ainsi que des formateurs. Ils n'étaient pas des centaines, ils étaient un peu moins de 40, plus de 30, moins de 40. Mais ils venaient de tous les continents, du Pakistan, d'Australie, de plusieurs pays d'Amérique latine, d'Amérique du Nord, d'Afrique, d'Hawaï également, d'Europe, mais en moindre quantité. Donc, vraiment de beaucoup d'endroits, et comme c'était pour la quasi-totalité d'entre eux la première fois pour les étudiants, pas pour les enseignants, qu'ils venaient en Europe, les rencontrer et voir leurs rencontres entre eux, leurs échanges, et leurs différences de culture qu'ils partageaient très vite et des préoccupations communes qu'ils avaient. C'est pour ça que leur centre d'intérêt les avait amenés à cette université d'été, était une extraordinaire expérience. Je le savais sur le papier puisque j'avais vu les provenances, mais vivre ça dans ce premier accueil, dans ce premier dîner, où nous les avons accueillis ensuite au Mémorial, qui est un lieu à la fois de mémoire, mais qui est un lieu de réflexion et un beau lieu d'accueil de la ville de Caen, était une expérience, j'espère pour eux, en tout cas pour moi, extrêmement intéressante, mais plus qu'intéressante, très riche humainement.
I landed in France to attend summer school with many new questions in my mind.
We knew that it would be complicated for the students if we talked to them about different concepts together in one sitting. So we divided the summer camp into 5 days to make it progressive for students, like a degree program. Day one, we explained to students why it's a historical necessity to develop laws protecting future generations. Day two, we discussed about how human rights can protect future generations and the future. Day three, we introduced the transcultural approach of making peace with the earth. So we invited indigenous peoples and explained to the students the abandon of the doctrine of discovery. Day 4 was dedicated to youth advocating for climate justice resolution, which needs to be passed
by the UN General Assembly for an advisory opinion in front of the International Court of Justice, Ambassador Odo Davey from Vanuatu opened the day. Day 5 was fun. It was D-Day. After 4 days of intensive training, we put the students to test and apply their knowledge at Model United Nations. It was held in a very historical place at Abbaye Dam, which is the Normandy region prestigious head office. They rose to the occasion. They were all very prepared with questions themselves during the International Summer School, coming up with questions that we also didn't expect to answer. And we were very pleasantly surprised at how prepared they were to take on more information than they had already learned in the months before, and also from university or wherever whatever their backgrounds were. We decided to start the summer school with Tony, who is not just a lawyer, but also a poet and an artist. He is a storyteller. So he used his skills to deliver a powerful message for the students.
My favorite part. You may say, I am a leader.
Sir Tony is an inspiration and someone who is ahead of his time. I don't think there's anyone in the legal community, at least in the Philippines, who are not familiar with his landmark cases, which were basically the first of its kind. These decisions established legal precedents that are now being cited and emulated in courts everywhere in the world. And Sir Tony has not stopped fighting. He continues to inspire through his actions, his words, his deeds, and through his leadership. And as what he often says, inspiration is leadership.
The environmental law has really just begun. I mean, it's only in existence since the 1970s. That's a very short time. Making peace with the planet gives us a global thought, but the war on nature is being conducted locally.
Professeur Robinson est un intellectuel de très grand niveau, donc cela n'était pas une surprise, c'était quelque chose de très important à apprécier. Et l'argument majeur qu'il a développé dans son propos, que face à une menace globale, face à un phénomène global comme le changement climatique, la multiplication, non seulement l'addition, mais la potentialisation, c'est-à-dire la démultiplication, une grande multiplication en quelque sorte, de quantité d'actions locales, était non seulement essentielle, mais la seule voie et une voie extrêmement productive de réponse et de prise en charge pour aller vite par les populations.
In 2019, in November, that the European Parliament issued their declaration. So the declaration that Europe recognizes that we are in a climate and environmental crisis. As you see, it's both climate and environmental crisis that has been declared.
Change the patterns of production and consumption, you have to go to the roots of colonization. You have to change economics. You have to make a revolutionary action.
My identity is intertwined with your identity, and it cannot be separated. I exist because you exist, because we exist. So everything is completely, utterly dependent on one another.
And when you talk about revolution, it not necessarily means to erase everything and start from the beginning. No, the real revolution starts inside the things because it's working inside the institution.
Well, when we talk to students, especially to young students,
We have an expectation because we understand that they can change things, they can improve things, they can take what you say and put it into practice.
Il faut imaginer, si aujourd'hui vous dites à un enfant, imaginez un enfant veut faire quelque chose du bien et c'est un désastre. D'un point de vue éthique conséquentialiste, vous allez punir l'enfant. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il a créé un désastre. Mais si l'enfant, il voulait faire du bien et il en résulte un désastre, depuis quand, on va dire c'est pas grave, c'est la bonne volonté qui compte.
My generation has failed the future generations. And let me conclude by reminding ourselves of a famous saying. We have not inherited the earth from our ancestors, we have borrowed it from our children.
We are in the midst of a sixth extinction period. An extinction period. We know species are going extinct because of our use and destruction of ecosystems and of other species. But it had, on the one wall, it has, here's the destruction of ecosystems, here's the restoration. Again, we're caught between these tensions of destruction, restoration, of hope and possibility.
Nous, humains, l'humanité est responsable à l'égard des autres espèces, à l'égard du vivant, tout simplement parce qu'elle a la conscience de ce qu'elle fait, alors que les autres espèces ne l'ont pas.
Corinne Lepage interacted with the students in order to invite them to become ambassador of her project. She has been leading an international campaign promoting the Universal Declarations of the Rights and Duties of Humankind since 2015, and students were absolutely amazed to meet her.
Mais tous ces sujets-là sont vus dans la Déclaration universelle des droits de l'humanité sous l'angle, précisément, non pas de droits individuels, mais de droits et devoirs de l'humanité. L'humanité étant définie comme étant la chaîne des générations, depuis les générations passées jusqu'aux générations futures, en passant bien sûr par les générations présentes. Et donc je pense que c'est un texte qui est vraiment très adapté aux problèmes de notre temps, et j'en ai une certaine preuve, si je puis dire, par les adhésions à ce texte et le soutien qu'il a reçu, non seulement de très grandes villes, de barreaux, de très nombreuses ONG, puisqu'il y a 80 ONG qui soutiennent la DDHU, d'universités, mais aussi de grandes organisations comme Cité Groupements Locaux Unis qui regroupe 250 000 villes dans le monde, ou l'Association internationale des maires francophones, ou les parlementaires de la Méditerranée. Tout ça sont des organisations qui soutiennent la déclaration, dont nous souhaitons qu'elle puisse bien entendu progresser au niveau international et être un jour reconnue au niveau de l'ONU.
Bonjour à toutes et tous, merci de votre attention, merci d'être présents aujourd'hui. Un grand merci à Émilie Gaillard d'avoir organisé notre intervention, et il me revient de vous exposer les travaux que mène la Commission Prospective et Innovation du Conseil national des barreaux en partenariat avec la chaire Normandie pour la paix.
Normandy Chair for Peace worked with Sophie Ferry, who is heading the Commission of Prospective at the National Council of Bars, which represents the 70,000 attorneys in France. She explained to our students how we drafted a resolution in order to promote rights of future generations in France.
Alors j'en profite en termes de responsabilité pour vous dire que on est tous ici. On a tous pris l'avion, le train. Ça représente un potentiel d'énergie dépensé énorme. Ça représente quelque part un luxe. On est content de nous retrouver là. Mais nous, on doit être responsable. Puisqu'on a été dans ce mouvement pour nous rencontrer dans ce colloque, eh bien, maintenant, en contrepartie, on doit être responsable. C'est-à-dire avoir des actions pour pouvoir compenser les vols qui ont été faits de par le monde. Voilà, donc je vous remercie.
Merci.
I'll tell you an interesting story. On the first day, the participants stayed in their own groups, but over the course of the program, it was interesting to see how they bridge communication and cultural gaps and started interacting with each other, this genuine exchange of stories from their own countries. And then they started dancing and singing and having fun together.
Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado el oído que en todo su ancho graba noches, días, grillos y canarios.
During my stay at Cannes, the memories that I will cherish forever are the dinners that we used to have with Emily, Nicole, Charlene, and all the other fellows from all around the world. And we used to discuss over matters for long hours, and these are the memories that I will cherish forever.
My passport, it's called Haudenosaunee passport, and and I've traveled to 24 countries, you know, with the passport. And every time I travel, though, I have to get a visa. I ask permission of the country to let me in. Like the Turo, the nation-to-nation relationship, you know, we ask permission to go in. And if they let me in, fine. If they don't let me in, I don't go. Brazil won't let me in, so I don't go to Brazil, and it's Brazil's loss as far as I'm concerned. You know. And well, Peru won't let me in. Chile recently wouldn't let us in a few years ago.
Not a word about me without me. It means we don't talk about indigenous people without indigenous peoples. And the summer school made it, and it was a great achievement.
Development is not a bad word. It's how it's used. You know, we're talking about the right to development, or development means modernization or something like that. That's not how I look at development. I look at development as our choosing.
Invité Kennedy, en fait, a été une évidence en tant que donc, représentant Mohawk de la nation de Kahnawake, parce qu'il est l'un des symboles, il n'est pas le seul, mais de la lutte des peuples autochtones pour la reconnaissance du droit à l'autodétermination. Il est lié aussi à la Confédération iroquoise des 6 nations, donc, dont le chef d'Escaé était l'un des premiers chefs à se rendre à la Société des Nations pour la reconnaissance de leur nation autochtone. Et par ailleurs, Kennedy s'est aussi rendu auprès du pape avec une délégation pour demander l'abrogation de la doctrine de la découverte. Donc Kennedy, en fait, est un diplomate autochtone, un messager, et qui justement est un messager vers les non-autochtones pour une alliance ensemble et pour protéger, respecter les droits des peuples autochtones et protéger aussi la santé de la planète et la santé des peuples.
Soigner la Terre pour que vous compreniez bien la révolution que ça pourrait représenter. Si on avait un passat d'humilité, ça, c'est pas beaucoup, hein. Ça, c'est une image que vous pourriez prendre en photo si vous allez là-bas. Je vais vous montrer la même image vue par eux, par les chamans Kogi. Voilà la même image. Ça, c'est quoi? Quand je vous regarde, vous, là, je vois de la peau, des yeux, un nez, une bouche, voilà, un corps avec des vêtements dessus. Est-ce que je vois le système sanguin? Non. Le système ventilatoire? Non plus. Le système nerveux? Non plus. Le système énergétique, pour ceux qui pensent que ça existe? Non plus. Est-ce qu'ils ne sont pas là? Si. C'est même grâce à ces systèmes-là que vous êtes vivants. Pour les Kogi, un territoire fonctionne pareil. Toutes ces trames que vous voyez, les cours d'eau, les flux magnétiques, pour ceux qui s'y intéressent, les déplacements des animaux, l'impact des étoiles, c'est ça qui forge la force et l'identité du territoire. Donc soigner la Terre, c'est conscientiser que le corps humain marche comme le territoire. Et ça, c'est pas autochtone. C'est autochtone au sens qu'ils en ont gardé la mémoire. C'est notre survie qui passe par là.
Alors pendant cette université d'été, j'ai essayé d'interpeller et de questionner les étudiants présents sur l'origine de la loi et mettre en perspective le fait que nous sommes confrontés à un espèce de double système de loi. Un système fait par les hommes pour les hommes, qui change un peu quand ça les arrange, et qui va parfois générer des lois qui vont contre la nature, donc contre nous-mêmes, puisque nous sommes des êtres de nature, avec tous les déséquilibres que nous connaissons. Il y a un système de loi qui est celui qui permet la vie. Ce n'est pas des lois au sens législatif, c'est des principes de vie que nous portons en nous, que toutes les formes de vivants portent. Si on les respecte, on peut imaginer que l'histoire va continuer. Si on va à leur rencontre, on peut penser malheureusement que l'histoire va s'arrêter. Et je pense que notre histoire moderne, et je pense que les étudiants qu'ils aient pu être confrontés à cet état des lieux de la loi. Ils n'ont pas souvent l'occasion de l'entendre et je pense que c'était très questionnant et j'imagine assez enrichissant dans leur parcours de formation. On a tellement oublié le vivant autour de nous et en nous qu'on a oublié ces lois. Mais est-ce qu'on peut longtemps vivre et développer nos activités en faisant abstraction de ces lois? La réponse est clairement non. Élisée Reclus, géographe du 19e, le disait très bien. Nous sommes la nature c'est l'homme, pardon, c'est la nature prenant conscience d'elle-même. À nous de faire le chemin pour reprendre conscience de la vie en nous. Tout est écrit dans la nature, il faut juste qu'on réapprenne à lire.
Éric Julien, en fait, c'est une personne à une approche particulièrement innovante en fait, du travail avec les peuples autochtones à partir également des universités. Et d'une part, en fait, Éric Julien pratique la réciprocité. Donc la réciprocité dans les peuples autochtones nous apportent, on doit apporter aux peuples autochtones. Donc il a permis la récupération de plusieurs centaines, milliers d'hectares de terre Kogi. Et d'autre part, il pratique par exemple les dialogues croisés entre autochtones et non autochtones. Et son autre apport aussi sont ses réflexions, mettre en lumière en fait que la loi n'est pas la loi des hommes, mais que c'est la loi de la nature, que savent très bien interpréter les Kogi.
A group known as the Pacific Island Students Fighting Climate Change was the first to bring the idea of an advisory opinion on climate change to the Vanuatu government. Advisory opinions carry great legal weight and moral authority and contribute to the clarification and development of international law for all states.
Now, the summer school happened in September 2022, and for some of us, we knew that in August 2022, a very devastating flood happened in Pakistan as an ongoing effect of climate change. The students from GCU Lahore University prepared a very short clip to show what the flood was like in Pakistan. And because I was very emotionally affected by that video itself, I also felt that, you know, issues like that in the global south are not taken up by mainstream media enough. So in order to pay our respects and in order to show our condolences and solidarity to the flood victims in Pakistan, I decided to invite the participants in the room to stand up for 1 minute silence in a show of respect and solidarity. We're not only thinking about the victims today, we're thinking about, you know, future generations, people unborn. And, you know, thanks to Emily and the Normandy Chair for Peace, we are bringing attention to the rights of future generations, the issues that are currently affecting future generations.
The title of my talk started with the phrase "raging rivers," and I was reminded of this by the powerful video that our friends from Pakistan shared with you. And my message to the Pacific Island students fighting climate change was that they were not alone, that I had worked with Justice Mike Wilson of the Hawaii Supreme Court, who has close connections with Jindal Global University. We have a representative with us today. They had an organization called The Final Stand youth group. We also had I Am Climate Justice. There are Nicole, Asia Wee, a number of folks from the Philippines that were working on these issues, as well as New York. We have students from Pace University whose predecessors were heavily involved, and many other youth groups around the country, and we just said around the world. And I just suggested to them, find your areas of commonality. There will be areas that you disagree with, but work together. And it wasn't me, it was a student-led initiative that created the World's Youth for Climate Justice, which has rightfully been recognized for all of their hard work. But part of that ally relationship with that student-led initiative has been the Normandy Chair for Peace. The Normandy Chair for Peace has hosted an event at The Hague in 2018. Margareta Veverinki Singh was there and Tony Oposa was there and really presented this idea, and it was very influential. And then in 2019, Tony Opos presented a petition to the Philippine embassy in New York.
Yes, over the past few days, I've just kind of been realizing that we're really blessed with this opportunity to be here, and thanks to the NCP as well, is that we're literally in the middle of this entire movement on climate change and future generations and rights for them. And so future generations, somebody can say that kind of era will start in 2030 or 2050, but future generations can be in 100 years, it can be in 10 years, or even in 10 months. There's young people that are, not even young people, but just people being affected all the time, and the future generation is, the future is literally the next second or the next minute, like that. And we're all in the same boat as well, and it's an analogy that Alan we were talking about earlier. We're all in the same boat, and we would be making it easier for everybody else and taking some of the weight off of other people's shoulders if we just work together. Because if you look at a boat, everybody has their oars, and if we stay coordinated and if we stay on the ball, and we keep building momentum.
We counter that with this is what's happening, but more importantly, this is what we can do. And just having that knowledge that sometimes you feel so helpless. Well, I felt like that the whole time, that I'm so helpless, that I'm so helpless about these things, and I empathize so much about what's happening in the Pacific, and sometimes that really burdens you. But I came across this book, and it was Sir Tony who shared this with me, by Rutger Bregman, Human Kindness, that he said that he doesn't really like the word empathy and would rather use the word compassion, because when you empathize with people, it limits you and it burdens you because you put yourselves in their shoes, so you don't know. It limits you because you feel like you can't do anything about it because it's too heavy, it's too burdensome. But when you're compassionate, you see it in a different lens, and now you're you don't put yourself in their position, but you see it in a different perspective. But that doesn't stop you from doing something about it.
There's a sort of concept in ownership that one has a right to do with what one owns. And this idea of ownership is what's has given rise to so much abuse of the natural resources and of the environment. But ownership is not the only type of relationship that humanity can have with nature and with the environment. There are other concepts of our relationship with the natural world, including guardianship, trusteeship, and global commons.
I think we should all give a round of applause for this whole event, which all traces back to Professor Emily Gaillard.
I would like to congratulate all of you, all the students. And my message is the following, is to have this spirit of shared leadership. Because Tony, his spirit is this shared leadership. Thank you to Dominic, because he has to work on the weekend. A round of applause for the techniques. And well, this is a special momentum. I think you all realize that. We are experiencing something we want to share. We want to inspire you, and you are our seeds of the future for rights of future generations.
The summer school was over, but it was not over, because it was time to the Model United Nations experience.
I hereby call the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly session to order. Distinguished delegates of Vanuatu.
We believe that an advisory opinion on climate change from the ICJ will not just summarize states' existing obligations with regards to human rights and climate change, but it can also deliver a progressive interpretation of those obligations and make global progress towards intergenerational equity and climate justice.
The United States is open to proposals that protect future generations, but will not co-sponsor the draft resolution as is.
Bangladesh respectfully suggests you to stand in solidarity with future generations.
Brazil has the right to do what it believes is the best for its people and their livelihood. We have to act now. There is not Planet B.
Russia will stand by Vanuatu, but we cannot, by any means,
condone the West's colonialist behavior by agreeing to their terms.
And you can see the excitement of the students when they finally take a seat behind the placard that tells them what country they're representing, and they were already prepared, and you could see the excitement. You could see also that during the breakout for the caucuses that they were taking their roles very, very seriously. You can see Kansai and ExxonMobil trying to lobby the countries that would probably play on their good side. You could also see Alibaba, all the tech giants, also influencing some other countries. You could also see Greenpeace International and Stop Ecocide International trying to lobby their positions and trying to make sure that, you know, certain things were being addressed by the countries that would take their side. So it was very rewarding.
Why we chose Vanuatu's ICJ resolution on climate change and human rights for our Meta-MUN. First, for its relevance, and second, because it's timely. Relevant because Vanuatu is a carbon-negative country, yet it remains to be one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. And this resolution is a student movement. It started from the classroom in South Pacific. And second, timely because during that time, the Vanuatu was already drafting a resolution to be voted by the United Nations General Assembly.
There were a lot of highlights that I remember from the International Summer School. I'll name a few. One of them was to me the fact that India, students from India and Pakistan work together as Vanuatu, as the same country, having a common position, when in fact, you know, these two countries have always been at odds at each other. Now, the second highlight that I found very interesting was that USA, the students who played the role of USA, mentioned that current generations should also be considered in the resolution. The result was that both current and future generations were mentioned in the resolution that was tabled. Thirdly was the fact that the students had a surprise special message from the ambassador of Vanuatu to the UN, Ambassador Odo Tevi. He sent in a well-wishing message to the students. And then fourthly, of course, that the resolution that was tabled during a Meta-MUN was voted favorably with 8 yeses, 3 noes, and 2 abstentions. And that actually meant a very successful resolution. In fact, Ellen and I, quite immediately after, informed the permanent mission of Vanuatu in New York about the results of the resolution, to which they were very, very happy about.
Students took this in a very realistic way. They really researched the positions of the governments that they were representing, because the governments who were vote during the UN General Assembly process. But they took, I would say, a constructive approach, not a deconstructive approach. Deconstructive approach is, which we find a lot in the international relations world, is where academics and students manage to explain all the reasons why things can't happen, why we can't have peace, why things, and they're very good at deconstructing the politics or even the law, as they say, in order to explain why things aren't good. I think that's a failure. To do that. I mean, it's very important to have that understanding, but I think a constructive approach is much better, where the students are looking at how do we resolve the problems? How do we resolve these issues of interest that countries have in fossil fuel industry? How do we work on transition, which is really important?
And it's thanks to experiences like this that I can meet amazing people who are creating legal mischief. That's something that I really hope to do in my career. Thank you for showing me that that's possible, and for showing me that there are people who are successful but are still in the trenches with us, fighting it at a grassroots level. You guys are so inspiring. Thank you.
I think we were all changed by this experience, and we're going back to our countries and our respective communities with a different mindset, a different vitality and vigor to change and to create impact.
Arbel Mpala, je viens du Cameroun, de l'université de Douala précisément. Alors, Monsieur Pascal, moi, je parle avec le cœur. Déjà, ici, je ne sens pas représenté ou je ne me sens pas représenté seulement le Cameroun, mais toute l'Afrique.
Chair has made a great effort to bring us, like, with the visa situation. There was a great concern that are usually only concerns for from people from developing countries or the global south, and the great challenge, and this has been greatly addressed by the Normandy.
I truly hope to see people like us in a UN conference passing something like this.
Taylor and I's we traveled 24 hours here, and I think it was all very worth it to come to this region of peace, to learn more about peace when we don't have peace.
I think Normandy now takes a special place in our heart because you introduce us to this world.
Mengual, Lolita Kouchen, Ashini,
Georgina Alikander. Fatima Asif. Ahmad Ali. Vika Krishna. Alejandra Bonhomme. Camila Badra. Camila Badra. Gaia Hassan. Ornella Signori. Gioe Kenny Nang. Kimat Bakshi. Holly Crawford. Carly Hopkins. Nadia Guzhugin. Chris Sudo. Noemi Street.
So time has come to leave the floor to the students. There is Musadak Sultan who's online on Facebook. He cannot interact with us, but I would like to address him our warm thanks for his tremendous work. There is a session of 4 p.m. which start later because I definitely want to share the floor with the students. I can see that online there is Mpala Armel, Lolita, Kenny. Can you please take the floor?
Who wants to start? Lolita? On va faire vite parce qu'on est en retard déjà.
Lolita, you
Allez-y.
have the floor.
Je vais être brève dans ce cas-là. D'abord,
So, first of all, it was really moving to see again those images. I mean, seeing all the fantastic week we had together. So it was really awesome. And this summer camp was a question of meetings, meeting exceptional people, extremely kindness, benevolence from all of the participants, of the professors. And this is my main key point. Of course, we saw the highlights here with Canadier, with Eric Julien, the floods in Pakistan, and all the actions there. So, of course, I loved the simulation I participated to, and it is one of the most important experience in my whole academic life. And also, I think that, you know, when you see things in a tangible way, you learn better. So this is absolutely outstanding. And I think that also my peers, my colleagues agree. And this is so much important for me. I still keep my my Madagascar panel. So yes, thank you. Thank you, Emily, for allowing us to join such an outstanding summer camp. Thank you also to Beatrice Tofoni and all the other students, professors. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, Lolita. Mpala,
Thank you.
Armel, vous pouvez
Mpala,
parler en français parce que
Armel,
la
you have the
traduction
floor.
simultanée en
You
anglais
can speak French
et
if
en
you
français.
wish.
Bien, bonjour à tout le monde.
Yes, hi, hello everyone.
Parler de ma petite expérience
So,
à l'université
as far as I
à
am
Normandie.
concerned in
Je
this
tiens
summer
déjà
camp,
à rappeler que
well,
c'était
first
un
of
grand
all,
bonheur
it
pour
was a
moi
great
d'avoir
privilege for
assisté
me
à cette
to,
prestigieuse
you know,
université d'été
attend
de septembre
this
2002.
fantastic
Je ne vais pas
university,
revenir sur
this
le
summer
déroulement
camp,
exactement,
and
ça a été fait par les
it
prédécesseurs.
was really,
Mais ce que je peux
really
dire pour mon expérience, c'est que
outstanding to
déjà
participate
au
to
niveau de
this summer
l'accueil,
school.
je ferai témoin des
And,
étudiants en tant qu'étudiant
you know,
international.
as international
Je pense
students
qu'il y avait
also,
beaucoup
we
d'hospitalité,
had
beaucoup de
so much
convivialité. Nous avons été reçus dans un
conviviality. We
cadre vraiment
shared a
aimable et
lot of
extraordinaire,
experiences, and we were
dont je ne
hosted
pourrais
in
pas
such a
oublier
fantastic
aussi dans le cadre de la
scenario.
formation
So
qui était assez intense. Je
obviously, we
tiens
had so
à
much
rappeler que
information,
j'ai été
and
marqué par
I was
le
also
fait que
very
les
much
étudiants venèrent
involved by the fact
de
that
tous les
most of the
coins du monde,
students came from all
avec
over the
chacun sa
world, and
culture,
everyone
chacun son domaine
had
de
his
recherche, sa
own
filière et tout,
culture,
ce
and
qui
you
a
know,
permis de
that
recevoir ces
was
enseignements, cette
really
formation
of
dans
a
un cadre
paramount importance
interdisciplinaire avec des
for me, because
interventions
we had
aussi
crossed
superbes, des panélistes
disciplines
aussi
and crossed
brillants. Et je tiens
uh,
aussi également à rappeler
trainings
que la dernière
and
session
background.
sur
So I think that also the
la
section
simulation des Nations
on
Unies
the
m'a permis
simulation, I
particulièrement de
mean, the
voir comment
simulation we had
les
of
négociations
the
se font
UN Assembly, for
au niveau
me,
des plus
it was
hautes
so
instances
nice to see
internationales,
how
surtout pour des
it is
questions aussi
important, you
poignantes
know,
et
and
d'actualité.
how we
Et
deal
ce
with
qui me
these
permet
key
effectivement aussi
issues at an
d'encourager beaucoup
international
de jeunes,
level. I think
dorénavant
we
de
can
réfléchir
also
sur des questions
enhance
comme celle des droits des
youngsters to
générations futures, de la
understand
protection
how
de
future
l'environnement, la
generation
justice
rights are
climatique. D'ailleurs,
put together, but
aujourd'hui,
also
moi qui suis
climatic
membre
changes
d'une
and so on. So,
association de
as
protection de
member
l'environnement,
of
lorsque
an
nous faisons les
association,
descentes dans
you know, when we
les
go
villages,
in
où nous
the
rencontrons les
villages, when we
populations
meet
autochtones, les populations
the
villageoises,
indigenous people,
nous commençons à les
we
sensibiliser sur
start to
penser à
raise
protéger leur
awareness
environnement,
on
leur forêt,
SDGs,
leur
on
culture,
their culture,
non
their
pas
forest, their
seulement
environment.
pour
So
elles, mais
not
surtout pour
only
leurs générations
for
futures.
them, but
Parce
for
que
future
avec
generations, as said. And
cette université,
I
j'ai
think that
compris la
in that
nécessité qu'il y avait
occasion, in
de
this
penser
summer
les droits des générations futures. Car si cette
school,
planète,
that
si ce
was
monde, si cette nature nous
so
appartient, mais elle
important to
appartient
see
aussi
these
aux
topics and
générations
how
futures.
nature
C'est aussi quand
belongs
même
to us, but
l'occasion pour moi
belongs
de
to the whole
remercier une fois
world
de
and
plus
to the
le professeur
future.
Émilie
So
Gaillard
I would like to
et toute
thank
son
here,
équipe qui sont mis
especially
à pied
Professor
d'œuvre
Émilie
pour le
Gaillard
bon
for
déroulement de cette
her
université. Et
involvement
je pourrais
and
inviter le
all the
reste du
jobs
panel
the
qui
job,
nous
the
regarde
hard
à
work she did in order to organize this edition. So a great round of applause for all of you.
Donc, merci
Thank you.
encore. C'était une très belle expérience
Thank you so much once more.
je
And
souhaiterais une fois de
also,
plus renouveler.
I would like
Et
to
surtout,
renew this
j'encourage
experience,
beaucoup
and
toute
I
cette équipe de la chaire
encourage
de
all
Normandie
this
à
team, the
continuer
Chair Normandy for
dans leur
Peace,
lancée.
to keep all these ideas in mind and continue, of course, their projects.
Ahmed.
Thank you.
Kenny est connecté, mais je
Kenny,
suis pas
you
certaine
are
qu'elle puisse
online.
parler. Kenny,
You
would
have
like
the
to
floor.
talk?
Hello, sorry, I am completely unprepared for this. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
But
Welcome.
Thank you. I thought this event was really great because it just reminded me what really interests me in the law, and it's a good reflection for me as well about what happened during the event. It just helps me to remind myself that what I'm actually really interested in, and I know a lot of effort and resources went into preparing this program. So thank you very much again. And the least I could do is just attend this closing session.
Thank you so much. I think I didn't forget anyone. There are many. We have still some good links with Paco Menguas, Advika, who helped a lot also. It's time to close this session because we have to move to the next session. But I would like to warmly thank all of the participants, all of the colleagues, all of the team of NCP, and also Normandy region, because Normandy region gave the opportunity to have the access to this very special place, which is Normandy region, Abbaye aux Dames. So it was great, and I can see that everybody was happy to have this place. And it has been a lot of struggle behind the scene, but still the experience was absolutely amazing. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Armel. Thank you, Lolita, for being here. Thank you, Aline. Thank you, Charlene. Thanks to David Forman and Shakil KASMI.